이제는 내가 삼리 개발도 미스버 슈춤 버다. 미스버 개춤 버다.
So it's mentioned in the way of the Bodhisattva, probably in the chapter on introspection, that until we have reached the stage of a mind that has such boundless compassion, that we should be reserved in our giving, for example, for even giving up parts of our body and so forth. And that's because when we reach a stage, which is again a mental stage where we have such boundless compassion, such limitless and unconditioned compassion, we can give away anything when we have that mind state. So in the way of the Bodhisattva, Shantideva again points to and alludes to this here, is that what we are able to tolerate and forbear all comes down to our mental attitude, the compass and scope of our mind. And really, great compassion is such an open, loving and caring state, such a virtuous state. It is really, it is a force. It holds a power and a force so that actually we can do so much and not experience any difficulty. We can withstand and willingly endure so much because of the power of compassion. And so this mind state of love and compassion is so powerful.
인데는 윤동아서 샘 소소 체동아도 떠낭 제거하다 빼미스게 첨버렸다. 그게 좋아. 제가 남배 중나마 제 샘기 녀몽 쳐라 견타야 당 그게 좋더라. 윤된을 담아시나 남배치 아버지 제시구마 대딩아들도 아니 롤모더지도 다루르지도 아니 넘버지도 남배치 용수서부터 차고 말다 남배치 용수서부터 차발라 샘타는 구거 원이잖아. 그래서 다 가르쳐라 루기 차시도 늦지와 남배치기 차시지를 마다데 우동야당 나동야당 ngaldeyadan anin rolmodungyadeso chashiri de nambechu ngone de mare ngone de semlen giwa tang edrwa semlen giwa tang de nyomong wikyonta ani gewe chogi yon semdege yondenta yonden tone de kombedo tangya popacheya toakeya tegete nambechu gi ningbo de tate tu diare.
So we should look to always remain within the state of inspiration, being very inspired and very upbeat, and that is to be inspired towards goodness and virtue, wholesomeness. And the very root of Buddhism is for one to do an inner examination of their own emotional state and see the negative emotions and see that they are problematic, that they are a defect and they are very problematic for one, and to really identify that in negative emotional states and see the positive, to see so many of the upsides of the virtuous states, the qualities that are actually in our mind when we have those constructive emotions and virtuous states. And this is very, very important to maintain our inspiration in virtue, because if it really takes our constant focus and interest in this section, in this direction. And this all comes from where we orient our mind. Very much, it's not as much about all of these physical displays that you might see of practice, spiritual practice, such as reciting prayers and mantras and playing some of the ritual instruments. This is not the heart of Buddhism. The heart of Buddhism really starts with the mind. It's really about where one is with their mind, in their mental attitude. This is the most important thing. To look at one's mind, see the negative and destructive emotions that arise, identify those and understand the problem with them, and then see the positive, constructive parts of our mind and attitude, the constructive emotions, and see these as good qualities and work to, with a devoted interest, to increase these more and more in one's attitude. This is really what is meant by the essence of Buddhism. This is what it all comes down to.
야스쯤 지와래 준주는 송도야 시진 리우랑래 데다 이게게다 뭐 시진 리우래 델타다게 셈디니 렉숭 레프송어자스 셈수 툴주 마토 툴주 망부치자 증도 델타다게 셈디니 세데 소스 셈데시고래 가르잖아 렉숭 시데페 셈기 랭이 제시바제네 야가 초데 야 가르소리 콘토르 땅야당 nembe chode dungal taking yude nyomo chode ma shu jaya dewa taking shu geve semde compel the tangwai na ta leksung le persung war chawa de ngori cha gore tindi che shegi na te samsung with tuju de ta tere te ma do jemba de we yo marla da mi da mangpo tinging ju budwa di shijin liu ne yore shijin liu na
And the great Bodhisattva Shantideva said in the chapter on introspection in the way of the Bodhisattva that it's within one's mind itself, one must focus on the positive and wholesome aspect. And there is the wholesome and unwholesome aspects. One focuses and trains in the wholesome aspect, and this is the training that is to be done. And so one focuses one's practice on mind itself. And what this means is one practices with one's own mind. And one examines that within one's mind, there are both the positive aspects and negative aspects of our mentalities. And within these two, it is the positive and wholesome aspect that one needs to increase and really look to develop. And the negative aspect, one looks to bring to a stop, to decrease the negative aspect of this. And if one understands this, then there is nothing else to train in, what the final lines of that quote. If you mean that if you understand this, then there's nothing else for you to learn in and train in. And so what we really must do with some personal introspection is we must look within the mind, look at the state of the mind, and look to decrease all of the negative arisings, negative emotions, negative thoughts that arise within one's mind, and train there, train with your own mind. This is the training that is to be done. And this is a very crucial and important point.
솔로가 접게 받으려도 시진 리우나.
And so this is verse number 18, and I will turn to that here. And so in verse 18, it says, let me just make sure, yeah. This is so, and therefore I will seize this mind of mine and guard it well. What used to me so many harsh austerities, but let me only discipline and guard my mind.
그게 전부 다 아주 윤도 다 디지 제시한다 가서 미제 눈나는 팽이야 팽이 자고 와 저도 남배 또 남배 최대 세면탄이 제를 마다 치 군저 잠지도 말다 군저라다 양단로야 요 말와
Kunchi-sama?
군저
Kunchi.
치기
Shirogi
치다
chopa.
치료를 다 뭔가 접사리지 땡해요 와
Ori.
그래서 다다 요 말에
Mm-hmm. And so, really, the very most important thing that we're called to do in the practice of Buddhism is really attend to our own minds. And we need to do this on an ongoing basis. And this is something that will be very, very beneficial for us in our life. It will really help us in this life. And it really is about what's happening within our own mental attitude toward things. It's not about the outward display or the way things look. It's about what's going on internally.
야, 당어서 겸로 semket 쪽으로 와. 상계 최당소기 전남라
Now opening prayers.
다니 겹순체 바게 진소기 배선남기 놀라 펜지레선게 노바라 상계 최당소기 전남라 장조 파도다니 겹 바게 진소기 배선남기 놀라 펜지레선게 노바라 상계 최단속의 전음라 장주 파도다니 겹 바게 진소기 존음 롤라 번지르 상계로 바라쇼 심전 탐제 대화당 대외 교당 덴바라 심전 탐제 동어당 동어계 교당 다워라 심전 탐제 동어 매배 대화당 민도 심전 탐제 니린 차당이 당다 냠라네 바라규르지 심전 탐제 대화 대외 교당 덴바라지 심전 탐제 동아계 교당 다와라 심전 탐제 동아 매베 대화당 민다와 심전 탐제 니린 차당이 당다 냠라네 바라규르지 심전 탐제 대화당 대외 교당 덴바라 심전 탐제 동아당 동아계 교당 다와라 심전 탐제 동아매배 대화당 민다와 심전 탐제 니린 차당이 당다외 당냠라네 바라규르지 심전 탐제 대화당 대외 교당 덴바라 심전 탐제 동아당 동아기 교당 다와 심전 탐제 동아매배 대화당 민다와 심전 탐제 니린 차당이 당다 당냠라네 바라규르지 사주비지 주제메도 제로니지 니에데옌바엔디 sonyejindo medembo dokenanda jenlae chebajo idam guru renamendala kaniyataya amin.
Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground spread with incense, adorned with strewn flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, and the sun and the moon, I imagine as a Buddha land, and by offering it to you, may all living beings enjoy this pure land. Thus, meeting the teaching of the peerless teacher is due to the spiritual mentor's kindness. I dedicate this virtue for all living beings to be cared for by excellent spiritual friends. Yadam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryata Yami.
그 두중에 좀 왔다 담제 방배 제를 담배 주니 던져배 고담 될라 차차로 야다 아주 전주겠다 바게 셔럽리우제 따와됐다 두다지게 따와타라게 개버려 인상 따 바게 따와 타라왕기 저바만 보지고 뭐래 딘디 인데가라다 이따 저바데 시발라다 또스 두데 수수 늦추도 또스 마시나 또스 가부 차고 와래 와 아니 그상 아마 성격에 다 너데 바다 저라마다 최탐제 렘버리 봐 아니 나랑도 통은하지 율문이 연대긴 수투도 두바 켈링인 땡데기 좀 다대당 모님에 버마와 민창 따요 좀 켈링이 우마 턴주와다 접어서래 인디가라 때이나나 다즉 발절 가서 그래 영화에 다고 따와 타라 관계 차거와 따와대 타라 인사 우마 던결 따와다 하장 따와 참으지 너데벨 따와다 하장 락바차요 다베 다베나네 락바차요 다 선점바 세야데 너데 빨래 또서 차차고 그래 양 딘디가라 다 먼저 딘 레베야데 단 너데 선점바다 우마 던결와 다 젤렌지야데 텔레디어데 이나양 선점베 내추도 또 하먹거나 얘는 저번에 양 시그마로와 인디가라 미스베게 전부 자들 다 드린 거서 선점베 걸라 또 슬랍 아니 선점베 진이도 디네 라인럽 꾸르베는데 라인이 저거 뒤쪽에나 뺑니 고서 양 팽기로와
So now the topic of the teachings is the 9th chapter in the Way of the Bodhisattva, which is the chapter dedicated towards wisdom. It is the wisdom chapter. And at this point in the chapter, it is detailing the different philosophical assertions of the 4 schools of Buddhism, the 4 philosophical schools, and detailing the differences in what they assert. And it is also demonstrating the view from the more coarse understanding of the view of the lower schools up to the prasangika, the highest of the schools, the refinement that is taking place in this view, in the philosophical view. So it goes through the 4 different schools and their differences in what their view of reality. And actually, to understand, and so there's a debate. This chapter it takes the context of debating points, making objections and refutations and positing assertions and so forth. And so there are these points of debating these assertions between the different schools. And if one doesn't first understand what it is that the different, what's happening in the debate and what the different schools believe, what they hold reality as, it'd be very, very hard to understand what's being said here and what's being debated here. So earlier on in the earlier quotes in verses in chapter 9 have been dedicated towards the lower schools of the Vaibhashika and Sautantrika and what they believe. And they actually hold, they're existentialists. They hold there to be existence in things just as they appear. And this has been debated by the Prasangika school. So what we have already discussed is how the Prasangikas then refute the views of the Vaibhashika and Sautantrika, who again say that there is some existence in things. There's a true existence in things. And they debate with the Prasangikas. So leaving that behind, we now look at the subtle differences in views when it comes to the mind-only school and the Prasangika, how the Prasangika then refute the views of the mind-only school. Now, the mind-only school is more refined than the lower 2 schools that we've already examined. They have a more refined view than the Vaibhashika and Sautantrikas. But still, the Prasangika that hold the highest and most refined view at all still refute some of the points within the mind-only school. And so it's important that you know these differences and where their views part, where things are different. And otherwise, it will be very hard to debate. So we need to look at what do the mind-only school posit? What are the assertions of the mind-only school? And Geshe-la said that he will send some of the major points that help to illuminate what the mind-only school assert. And I can get those translated clearly and get those out. And that will help us to also understand what's happening here in this debate. So how many of you feel like so you could maybe raise your hands, how many of you feel like you really understand the difference between the philosophical views of the 4 schools? I guess raise your hand if you feel maybe like you understand that clearly or you understand it very well.
That Indiana Buddhist Center, ta nangpi chidani tutha zade ta jiyore rakpa jana tutha ji chere tutha ji de tawa thara gi chani tawa norgyo marta tawa thara gi chani ani tutha mawa ji chungre jeta mawa dode pa sen zamba uma paaz ta samlo gyachi chungi khebar wangi kibu sum zada lamrim ni shebe kibu sum lamdo ni shebe ta kibu sum siade samlo gyachi chungi chungre ji de sherab gi charata tawa zade sherab dhuwarwa ani samlo gyachi chungde chepal dhuware Cheparanchipo sometimes Dibu Ladami Kopan Dogenjina Sendi Ditsendizam Kibuche, Kewa Chimadayang, Kelemba Yinayang, Kewa Chimade, Ladami Kopanji Tongerche, Sudim Yabo, Sum, and in Anson Sumla Mizuya Tapsi Chekenjila, Kibuchu Sior. Roa. And then some Lotele Gato said the Numola Kyondutane, and then Sochipo, Tarpatunganjela, Kibunding Sigore. And Dibude could Tarpazamado, Chepping on the tap, Sigore, the country, Tarpazamado, Yaran Regiment Divi to go Mado, Sangi Kopantadung to go Mare. The Samlugi Kepargi Jure. Ta Ranchibu Maimba, Numonza Maimba, Numoja Sabi, the Nip Pacha deang, Sigitiva Kunsta. The Tendavade, any pe Pangel Tondala, Simchen Chela, any pe Vicky to be at Tondala, Sem Kene, any Tony Dobel Tawa, the Chanchuki, Sem Gizimbachini, she did in your boy to Veina, Minimian, the Sangi Kopans in the two war.
Kariki Sharapin conducted Giltrason Gondela.
Dindua
Simchentam.
Semgizine, Tony Dobel Tawa, the Chanchuki, Semgizine, she did in your bond to Vegene.
Or Shedrick.
Shijindiba. She just ended the Shijindiba, she just able to port the Chonginji Chadiora. Namkin Tobelan Gagigore. Number time can be issued to engaging in Jilly Chadiora. All that thing in bond to Vegene, those Gene, and it's Sangi Kopan to be a Sungore. Indigala, Kevandua. And Kibunding down Chumudi, Kibunding the Mantang Ninjung Sambezingore. Kibuchu then Ninjung Samba Pita Bojiman and Ninjung Samba War, Kanjang and Sonson Tandoji Loju Warwa. Nason Sum Pay, Zungal de la Pay, Kyondo Tau Warwa. What a day, they won't get somebody get you wangi, Kibusum, Ni Tawa Taragoni, any to touch Yisar Jungre, they pay catching.
So then if there are more people that don't have a clear understanding of the differences between the four philosophical schools of Buddhism, it's important to take time and dedicate time to that here and now. So generally speaking, in a broad classification, we can take the different philosophical views that are held within Buddhism and classify them in four categories, in these four of Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamaka. So these are the four major classifications of philosophical schools in Buddhism. And what actually is how they're divided into these four is how they view reality, their view of reality, of what is kind of happening as a reality. And it's not that some of the schools, of these tenet systems, we could call them, it's not that some are mistaken and some are right, that have correct views and some have incorrect views. The reason they're classified in these four is how refined their view of reality is. And so when it comes to the view and the philosophical systems and views of Buddhism, there are four. And also then within individuals also can be classified. And they're classified due to in regard to the level of their wisdom. of their sharpness of wisdom. We call this the 3 capacities of beings. So the 4 tenet systems are classified in with regard to the view, and the capacities of beings are classified with regard to their wisdom, their sharpness. And so we look at these 3. And the first category, the lowest category or more inferior capacity of being, or lesser capacity, those of the lesser capacity, they focus very much on their activities, their behaviors, and their conduct in a way that does hold renunciation, for they look to enter and practice a spiritual path so that in the future they attain a higher rebirth, a higher birth in the gods or humans, in the dimension of gods and humans. They look to guard their ethical discipline so that they control their conduct in a way that they will then attain the result of avoiding the lower realms and attaining a higher rebirth. And so this is the being of the lesser capacity. And now moving to the being of a middling capacity, for them, they have a higher intention. And so in the lesser capacity, they're really working for their own benefit. They want to avoid for themselves the lower realms and attain for themselves the higher realms. But now when we get into the middling being, there is a little bit of a higher intention, because they work with the afflictive emotions, understanding that through purifying the obscuration of afflictions, negative emotions, and all of the karmic traces that come with negative emotions, that for themselves they can attain not only the higher realms, but they can attain liberation. Again, though, working for themselves, for self-liberation. They work at the emotional level to become liberated, so to gain liberation. And now, this is not a full liberation. This is the liberation that is attained by someone working at this level, is what's called a partial nirvana. They attain not this level of full enlightenment, not the state of the level of a Buddha, Buddhahood, but they do attain the level of an arhat. And so there is a difference between this partial nirvana and the level of an arhat. There's a difference between full Buddhahood and full nirvana. So this is the middling level, the capacity being. And again, they work for oneself, and they look to eliminate negative emotions. But now we look to the higher capacity of beings, and the higher capacity of being would look to work at the level of eliminating what's called the cognitive obscurations, or the obscuration to wisdom. And when you reach, and also working at this level, one is not working for the sole purpose of one's own liberation or a higher rebirth, but one is working for the happiness and good of all sentient beings. That is one's focus. One focuses on the attainment of their spiritual path so that they can benefit and bring happiness to all sentient beings, and also work with the understanding and teachings and trainings on emptiness. Emptiness, which is the remedy or the remedial action that purifies this cognitive obscuration, that removes the veils to wisdom. And so with emptiness and bodhicitta, or this altruistic intent working for the good of all, one then focuses one's practice in a way that removes, now one will have removed emotional or afflictive obscurations, cognitive obscurations, and now this brings about the fruition of the wisdom of full omniscience. And this is really the path and the remedial action that leads to wisdom, complete omniscience, complete awakening, the state of full Buddhahood. So we see there's a difference here between these three capacities of beings. And so beings are categorized in accord to their wisdom. And the philosophical tenet systems are categorized based on the refinement or coarseness of their view of reality. So we have these two things that are going on.
Tarade di wangi karchegore ngaju yujla ngazo dupu tengi tape nyomong chuke semde rakpade dame rapage pangtu gore cheza nyomong de la pe nyimpo de yene menata songi to tawat chadi gore rwa kanji kanzaga dame chugi dame zene pe ta tunde wangi chera madan do de chugi dame te kelingo mare
Yanker di.
Cheta mawadan dede bani, dame keling mare, kansa ka dame samado. Cheta mawagi, kansa ka dame rabba mado tamu keling mare. Tamu kundu.
Ola so, dene kale la na yapo trigore and yapo. Dene tangpo di dodepa gang.
Cheta mawa. Kansa ka chugi dame keling mare esi. Kansa ka dame mado. Dinani cheta mawe kansa ka dame rabba. Kiji sundengi dame bazi deda. Dame rabba jishi gore kanji.
Chugi dame pa.
Kansa ka dame.
Gangsa ki dame.
Chugi dame keling marwa. Chugi dame la thara nyi chene rabba mado thamudu keling mare cheta mawe. Odebi thara nyi ka keling gire. Ode khepari gore.
And so with regard to selflessness, then there's, or emptiness, there are the focuses on the lack of a self of phenomena, selflessness in phenomena, and selflessness of the individual. And so to realize and to see selflessness in our own minds, our very thick obscurations, our very thick afflictions, we're able to see our very coarse afflictions, and we're able to abandon affliction and negativity when it is very coarse and very obvious. Then we can abandon those afflictions. But with regard to selflessness or emptiness, much of the distinction between the four philosophical tenet system comes down to, or is focused on, what they assert to be existent or empty. So, for example, when it comes to the Vaibhashika and Sautantrika, they accept the lack of a self in it, of the individual. So emptiness of a self of the individual, but they do not accept the emptiness of self or self-existence of phenomena. And so with ani dodepa konsogi derpa kariyorela.
도데베타 간사가 다메라 참모다 락바니지 니가 켈링그레스 락바 시디갈라 가 참메비 지부 제기 리부 미지베 딱바젠데 데네 기지 숨된게 다지 켈링 자도 마두바데 켈링 거래 데네 데데 간사가 다메 락바레 다 다메 참모다 간사 랑캬투빈 제기 다메 바즈 랑캬 투바즈데 ngaranzo semnala mazo nga sidigala chi chutubaji jenla matebaji kherkyangdaji chutu wangyurba bozori semna chergdo ngaranzo
Ani derpa sure di
dodebeta ti kansagadame thamodre ti to sutte tele kyondaltade duschide kanje nyumo rapa shukja thubore kansagadame thamodgi.
And so then within the school of Dodepa or Sautantrika, well, they do accept that there are two levels of the lack of a self of the individual. So they do accept, though, they do assert then they chame padang
chame betapa jibu chame bichipu minji betapa jipa me betapa odati chirolbe tende za khilingore nambe tende za tiyo mare se labore za tende za to matuba chezan chinangi khebarde da yumegani chigorwa kundan kunjin janje bosuyore adalte jil dugo chinangi da to tavel tawade chetunga to tuba khilingende chirolba da to tavel tawade chetunga to never dongende nang pasigore eke chembore tenga tuta chinangi khebar kanje dubde wangi chena da to tavel tawa duban dongende chirolba Matubandegende Nangpasi gore.
Ani susungpare di
sikjedi janjeba.
Janjeba.
Tumta tavene ngin din kurgo dalte jein dungo chinangis.
And so the Sautantrikas assert that the individual, that there is an individual that is unitary and permanent and is unable to, that does not deteriorate, that cannot be destroyed. They assert this. And so they, and again, Dene dodepa denso di rankya dang
dodepa dame rakban khilingre thamo khilingro ar thamo sedigala kaza rankya to binje gidame pade thamore kiji sundan gidame pade dame rakbare echata mawadan dodepa ngin tumo khilingare.
And so actually both of the Vaibhashika and Sautantrika do accept an individual that holds those three qualities: unitary, permanent, and one that cannot be destroyed. It goes on. And that's the coarse level of the individual that they accept and posit. And on a subtle level, within the Sautantrika especially, they then take this self-existence to a more refined understanding. So that was the coarse understanding of what a self is, and the refined understanding of a self, according to that school, is a self that actually is self-sustaining, that is exactly constant in just the way it appears. It is constant. It is self-sustaining. It is just the way it appears, and it possesses agency. It possesses some kind of a power, of a freedom of agency. And so this is the Sautantrika school. And so also Chungkyen Jangyang Shepa said, so here we're discussing the levels of the view, and especially in regard at this point to which schools posit self-existence. And so here, Kunchen Jangyang Shepa said that the difference between a non-Buddhist believe in the existence of a self and Buddhists do not accept existence of a self or intrinsic nature, intrinsic self nature. So that's the difference. Basically, what's being said here is the difference between being a Buddhist or not Buddhist is whether you see an intrinsic self-existence or don't see intrinsic self-existence. And Geshe-la said he can send out that quote. We can get that clearly as well.
다음에벨 따왔대 뉴몬 방야게 답에 무이기 님부쟁인데 차디었다. 다 뉴몬 라파 방야라 다음에 라파게 두고아래 뉴몬 다 차루차루르드가라 인 따와된 차루차루르고아래 대왕게 또다 이중성래 대 개버도와 답게 차니 어때 뒤송다 대응이 점아주고.
So when it comes to understanding or seeing emptiness, seeing the lack of true existence in, as we've been speaking, both phenomena and in persons or individuals, this is the very top remedy for the afflictions. It is the very top way to counteract the arising of emotional mind states. This is what really is the remedial action. It is seeing the lack of intrinsic existence. This is the very top method to do this. And so then when it comes to seeing what is empty, what things, what phenomena, what individuals are empty and how they're empty, then the differences in points of view on this are how these different how the four philosophical schools came to be divided.
자, 다음에 봐대 녀몽부터 녀몽기 녀부체도 연아 맨나데 따뜻 차디오래. 이 문이 점된데다 이셰네 다 진상 잉글랜드 생리바 발전디 코에나 민라 데비디네 지 락도
라 카레
생리바지 잉글랜드
and repeat meaning
데비디네 지 락도 데빗
David. Oh, okay, last one.
거기 로니스 땡알라 다음에 곰네 녀모나마 야자니스 땡아 슈충 루두스 콜락도 아니 코다 나베기시니 까지지도가라 콜 타와데 간제 투타 오멜 타와 마다 તરુણ 투타 કોમેલ 타와 તાતા 곰식 민두시 લગદવા 네 그라 투타 오멜 타와 તાતા 라투고도 녀모 라파테 다 이괴 야징이 생아 마 차기도 저다 녀모 라파 차고 다데리 더둔 참우 내디어와
디 롱이 슈생아
로니 생아 그 다음에 고면 인스 다음에 고면 로니 생아 냠뇽도네 야징이 생아 녀모 슈충로도
아 센리파데
세리바데 대상 준된데 순교다 단단들이 냠는 책임지나 녀모슈 중루기여다 깨져게나 봤대 때마다 탑시진다 녀모 때니 방야라 다음에 벨타오마다 젠다 유니 탑시진다 요 말다
Mhm.
깨게 첨버래
Mhm.
데라도 연구도 단단들이
Mhm. And so there is a very big connection to a realization of selflessness and the afflictive emotions. And it really comes down to whether one realizes the lack of intrinsic existence in things or not. This really has a great bearing on the one's emotional and reactional experiences. And so this is exactly what the Buddha said. This is what the Buddha taught. And actually, there's a modern day example of this. There is a scientist in England. His name is David. And with an understanding of science, he then studied so when we talk about lack of intrinsic existence, we also call this selflessness. And he meditated on selflessness for 25 years. And through this ongoing meditation, he now says that 25 dene gyacha aninishu senga 25%, his emotional responses, emotional upset, negative emotions have reduced 25%. Due to meditating and seeing things, seeing the lack of intrinsic existence of a true existent realities in things. So there's really a parallel view within Buddhism and science here. But what this scientist was experienced was, again, we mentioned that there are the coarse understanding of and the of emptiness and selflessness, and then there's a more refined, all of those more refined points, seeing into the emptiness of things. And this particular scientist worked on that lower level, such as the Vaibhashika level, the lower school level, and still had a very good experience, a very good result, as the negative emotions really decreased and really lessened. And it's 100% sure that if one, with the view, practices Buddhism, that the afflictive emotions will decrease 100% if you practice Buddhism. But in order to really eliminate the negative emotions and to have this reduction in negative emotions, one must be focused in a particular subject within Buddhism, which is selflessness. And except for the study and practice of selflessness, there is nothing else that will eliminate the negative emotions, the afflictive emotions in one's mind. Mm-hmm. So that which is the antidote that abandons negative emotions is selflessness. It completely cuts through and will separate oneself from negative emotion. That method is selflessness. However, within all of the topics within Buddhism, there are other strategies, methods, and techniques that work on the negative emotions. Emptiness and selflessness is that which completely abandons and uproots and eliminates negative emotions. But there are other techniques, methods, strategies within Buddhism where one works with one's emotions.
자자 때마다 매야던 남들은 니서 잠송 몽당 갈매치 신dunye ba sarche min zer sungre lovin chugi tabe namdel nala jambala soba tejo pe mongba mari bata pe thekar ko page jindangu sungalwa mare to gala tigi ten tawangin me zotuya yo mares jambala soba tegiti jamsong mongdang galmechir 신dunye ba sarche min pe ngazo dungal tengin mari bade pe sarche tubu marse sungre 다 가르치고네 잠박 당 아니 다 빼는 가서 컨트롤이 지켜이나 아니 제단을 지켜나 아니 탑 기차니 때 자투비에 여러 말 뛰어레스 빼는 가서 말결 깨나 엔 텐델 고미나 텐델 사무다이나 텐델 기톤다 사무다이나 나젤 추pe 슈자그레스 아니 도차르지 깨이나 간지 도차 키지 율들 미두 보고메이나 베는 부이나 비메 룰레 차네 도차 키그레 티저긴 도차데도 비메 룰레 테니 그래 비메 룰데네 아니베 즉 류기 버분 부가 구니 미자만 바바데 티 삼다네 아니베 직 삼다이나 티 가그레 보몬데지나 불라데 찌빠찌냐레 보모 비 류데 파미 쿠달 tun데긴로와 부가군이 미자원 잡아 찍빠찍게 하러와 개발 미도와 오다 tenegi 사무단 미도 보고메나 또서 도차 슈충을 누구래 빵투비에 또 요마래 답기 전에 또고 컵도 로 갈다지 사무단에 누스제니 슈자에게 탑시 요래 데라 타심빈이 뭐라 또 슈자야 슈자야마도 때니 빵투비에 요마르디기 이 개발도와 남부촌인데 때 가서 삼당와도 빼게 전부도와 지금 가서 나결 배두가 코는 나가체 빼 야가 여서도 섬기러 텐델 삼로당인데 가라 여름 중다 텐델 삼당데 텐델 떤다 가서 고구마라 먹어도 써서 하고라 미다게 시금인도 선선지용다 나결마 작도와 여름 제 컴퓨터 삼당 공부지도 가라 여름 제 투기 나결 자기도 수승도 여름 제 나결도 요 말다 젠라 탑게부터는 승부하러 얌sem보로 아까 단다 테크놀로지도 좀 루인 미치지 미 레베 주겨레데 이나 미 강가이 레베네티 주야지다 말해 얌sem보도 와 그래서 삼당과 빼게 좀으로도 와
And so, for example, we understand that we have these afflictions arising in our mind, this negativity, these destructive emotions. And in the Shugidropa, so in the Lamdrel, then
Namdel.
Oh, Namdrel, in the Namdrel, in this text on valid cognition, then Dharmakirti said that even though the Yankirchikti Yapotrim
잠소 몽당 갈매치르스 잠바다 니지소 몽바 마리 바당 갈와 마레스 컵둘라 갈다 마레스 티 인도가 갈다 마인비 규쟁기 티페 몽바 마리 바 차르체 두 마레 잠소 몽당 갈매치르 신두nye 바 차르체 민 신두nye 바는 쩐 첨부 요간에 마리 바들어와 티 차르체 두 마레스 티 빼게 시드 낙부도와
who said that all, through the vast practices of love and compassion, one cannot, although they do oppose ignorance, they are not enough to uproot and completely destroy this state of not knowing, this state of ignorance. And so love and compassion, they do counteract the negative emotions, but they are not enough to completely remove it or to cut it off so that it does not arise. So, for example, there are methods that one can utilize when different emotions and situations arise. So say, for example, one is feeling a lot of hatred. One is really, really, really angry. Anger has arisen already. There are methods to counteract that anger. One can apply another mindset, another remedy, so that one's anger calms down and one gets oneself in control. Or let's say pride, if one is feeling pride. When we're feeling pride, we're very much thinking we are the very, very best and most important. And then His Holiness always says that to counteract pride, one should think about interdependence. So think about those 12 links, think about interdependence. Or if one is feeling a great deal of attachment towards someone, so for example, often the object of attachment for men would be women and women would be men. So let's take the example of a man who is really attracted towards a woman, who is really having these feelings of great desire. Then to counteract that, then one would think about the substances within that person, within that attractive woman. One would then think of, what's beneath that skin. Actually not so sweet and attractive at all. And that helps to counteract that feeling of great lust and desire when we think of that. And it doesn't matter, actually. It's very much the same whether it is a woman who is looking to employ this and is attracted to a member of the opposite sex, for example. It doesn't matter which of the genders, because actually, no matter if it is a man or a woman, the physical body is simply components that were gained from the father and mother through sperm and ovum, and now are filled with all of these same, substances that aren't so sweet and attractive when it really gets down to looking at them. And so one can remember that in the throes of great desire and possessiveness, and one's attachment and desire will lessen a little bit. It won't be removed because, again, these are antidotes. This is not completely uprooting these feelings from arising, but there are antidotes to use once they do arise. So these are remedial actions. And so we can see that Buddhism does offer these remedial actions for us to use in the interim, for us to get our different emotional states in control and gain control and composure again. But they don't completely uproot and remove them, just like we heard in that quote. The only thing that has the power to completely uproot this ignorance, is to see emptiness. So again, for example, when one is feeling pride, vanity, one thinking one is better, well, you can immediately look, for example, into the 12 links of interdependence and thinking, oh, I don't understand the depth of this. And that helps to quell one's pride. Or what His Holiness says is, for example, technology, working with the computer, or everything that's happening with technology. One, will, if one looks at some very complicated, difficult technology, one's pride will automatically simmer down.
Ani jedangajina jamba gomkore ta te jamba gomina jamba samlo to jenla be jamba gomina jenle mi be jedangde tada shu jagre jesu shu jayare da be rami yulli kike bardo gumande jene shu jade nyomong shu jane semli diki duya tablam sungorwa sem thuru ma jo de sem te be naldu neyagi tabshiro wa te tu be ke chmudo wa 다 밤에 율릭 디단 저데라 냠린 담에 냠린 지니 담이 율릭이나 뇽 뺏다가 매서 두고 와라 뇽몰로 3년 전부 땅 통인데 딱 담에 벨 타와들이
And so when it comes, for example, if you're angry, if you get angry at someone, so how to counteract that is to immediately feel love and kindness, feel kindly towards that person, feel love for that person. And as soon as we're feeling kindly and loving, we're not looking through anger anymore. And so it really helps to simmer that down when we see someone with love. So until the point where we can actually see the emptiness of all of it, it helps to have this method, such as looking at someone with love, which immediately quells the hatred or anger. And it really, really helps. It helps to counteract the emotion. And it also helps for yourself to gain happiness, to regain composure, to regain the state of not being upset. And when we have composure and we're not upset and we feel peaceful and happiness, then we have a chance to look at our own minds, to see through to one's own mind. And seeing through into the view of realizing a lack of intrinsic existence, which is what's called the view of selflessness. So this provides us, these remedial actions provide us with the temporary remedies that we need to gain the composure, and then through maintaining composure and happiness and peacefulness, we will be able to see through and see into eventually realizing the lack of intrinsic existence, or the view of selflessness, which will completely eliminate any of these future arisings.
Mini chamba gome khazula tele mini tape jedang ke khondu ke kokap junior mata tape ke chmore ata te de jibaji yang ani miduba gome kapdala ti kapdala tape yul kanji jebaji jona ya miduba gomde na dile mini ni be chaba ke tapse kono yo mare ku semen ding de na be misang 리지 딴데 들어가라 텔레미니 이동화지 차례미도 와. 너 차근 코랑배 팅이데 배 삼르다나 대가랑게 가로지 케도도 미바주 이동화래 미세디 미바델 너자 키즈 율데 주 이동화지 고라 배 세미나를 배 이동화지 닌제보 율 코랑원이 연한다 맨한다 Similarly, ninjibo chare tungore. Yurungoni meta salvo sakare. Mi kanebe zebo rezana pu hero racing then zebo kazitana. Pune chugun stana koltada mara chuar mi susula. Look at some cabaret mother, Yurungoni, you're chu yongway or Yulchi mother yomarwa. Yurungone calling ninjibo the yomarde. 미버 이동하라 수수응은 이동하지 난거래 난나지 쟁거래 then 남반 달 가와진 로테당 애니베 자율되게 빼달 가보 카가 재미 두야 된디 온 거래 되니 다 젤레 간지 너던데 마주이나 가르지 즉 마주이나 다 수습에 자율되다 던딩에지 마주이나 아니 동알 끼거와 젤리 동알 끼베 텐체 발라레 미바주 이도알미 넘버 달고 넘버친 젤리 동알 끼베 텐체 바스
Oh, young Kirchik.
미바주 이도알미 넘버 달까와 젤리 동알 끼베 텐체 바 칸 띠아고지면도 동알 끼게나다 양지께 리미도 여기도 삼다나 지 고구도 한 거죠. 남자 분도 중하지 삼다나. 진도차게 생기더래.
So actually constantly, so we spoke about using the generation of an attitude of love to remedy a situation at hand. But actually, if we are always holding a loving attitude, if we just go about life in a very loving way, this works as a preventative as well. If we're holding love, then we won't get angry. If we're really holding love towards those around us, we won't get angry. There's no way for this to take root in our mind and grow and arise in a state of love. And in the same way, we can constantly go about our daily life with the understanding in our mind that of what physical bodies actually are, of everything they are under the skin, all that is really the biology of the body. When we go about viewing others like this, then there's no way we're going to fall into a trap of complete unabashed like desire and being swept away by someone's beauty or handsomeness. We won't lose our composure in this way. Because, for example, what desire is, if we unpack what desire is the essence of desire comes from the mind seeing something as beautiful, as breathtaking, as head-turning. And this is where desire gets its toehold. First, the mind sees something as amazingly beautiful. One gets hooked that way, and one then desires. And so, and this is whether the object, doesn't matter whether the object is existent or non-existent. We're not even looking at that level. We're looking at the mind level. The mind sees it as really attractive, as really beautiful, super handsome. Oh my goodness, that hero. Look how brave, look how handsome. The mind sees it that way, and then we become attached to that feeling. But actually, whether, you know, that girl is absolutely beautiful or that hero is so handsome does not lie within the object itself, but lies within the mind that perceives it. It's the mind that makes it so. It is the difference in the way the mind views it. So it really is not about the form that is beheld. It is about the subjective view of the mind that is perceiving it. And so the mind perceives it as absolutely beautiful or handsome. And then one can't stop thinking about it. One can't separate themselves from it. One is hooked in a way that's very, very hard to separate oneself from. And then The next thing is this attachment and desire is what is the third step. I'm sorry. So then we desire it, and then we suffer. It is then an object of our desires and will bring about suffering and difficulty. The attachment to it brings about suffering and difficulty. So actually, this is the way that attachment is defined. It is defined as a threefold process. First, the mind perceives it as something exceptionally beautiful or handsome, attractive. The second thing is one can't forget about it. One obsesses over it. One is very, very hard to stop thinking about it, stop wanting it. And then third step is there is the difficulty and suffering that comes from our attachment to that object. And if you really think about this process, it really actually thoroughly and correctly think about what's happening when you become attached to it, you'll be able to track back into these three steps and actually see this threefold process and all that we then, what we go through in this process.
다 두스레 다 탑기 전에다 고 될거에 롱갈 둘다니 녀모 슈자에게 탑시다 나부치는 순거래 와다 때렸다 또서 군산단계.
And so this is a little bit about some of the methods that we can use for our emotions. What are the methods that counteract some of the unfavorable and destructive emotions, and what Buddhism says and offers for us to apply as methods to counteract unfavorable and negative mental states and emotions. And now maybe time for a break. Maybe we take a break here. Does that sound good? Okay, so 5 or 10 minutes, Geshe-la?
Yeah, what do you want?
Okay. So we'll take a little break.
Diane, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Is there normally a Q&A time at the end? Because I do find myself with at least one burning question. Is there an opportunity to pose those at some point?
Usually we do have time at the end for Q&A.
Nice. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Diane. Hi, Gisela.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Mark.
I'm sorry I'm coming up as Indiana Buddhist Center today, but I
Oh,
can't find a way for some reason. You know, Zoom is everyone's always working to improve things. Someone must have forgot a sign out option because I can't sign out from my phone app.
oh,
So I am somebody different today.
mm-hmm. I think sometimes they do update dates and they work on things, and suddenly the way we used to do things or the way it used to look, the interface is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Week
No
to
notice. Huh?
week to week.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Gisela. How are you?
Good. I'm similarly.
Always. Wonderful.
Now here changing a little bit.
I have changes right around here, a
Yeah.
little bit
Here.
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 Is Uncle Yama invitation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my camera off so I can eat because I don't want to be rude, but I had to get some lunch. I'm hungry. But Diane, thank you so much for doing the translation this week. It's beautiful.
Good. Good. Glad it was helpful.
Very, very helpful. Hey, Doug. Do you know how to log out? Like I've tried signing out of the Zoom app and I can't find where I used to be able to sign out. It's gone. So I had to sign in. There are 2 Indiana Buddhist Center representatives today on Zoom.
Oh, well, that's good. That's a good thing.
Hey, I think Doug's going to be signing out and take an early leave here.
Mark, are you on an iPhone?
No, I'm on a Samsung.
Never mind then. I cannot answer your question.
Last week it was there. It was there. All I had to do was click on the my avatar, and it gave me the sign out option, so I could sign back in as Mark Preston Moss. But I am now
You
Permanent.
put on double mask.
Buddhist Center. So this is helping me with my attachment to my name. Just call me IBC, Preston Moss, maybe.
Yeah, and I know how to do it on a computer, but Android, I just don't know. Don't know.
There's certain things I didn't want to push because I was afraid that if it signed me in as IBC, that I might kick you off and thereby everyone else would disappear. And then we go, what happened? It's like, it's a non-attachment practice the Buddhists with technology like to do. But I'll just play around with that after we're done. Heidi, I'm glad I make you laugh. Okay.
How's the book going?
Hey, Francis. So actually, what's really cool is I was supposed to get the printing was supposed to start on Monday, and I was supposed to get a proof this week. But I had lunch with Geshe-la, and we came up with a way to get a forward from him. And I panicked. And went, oh crap! So I called Jeremy and I said, "Is it too late? Can you like not start printing?" He goes, "No, we're fine. What do you want?" I said, "Well, there's a way for me to get the forward that I've dreamed of." And so I got 3 people to, Doug was one, Geshe-la was another one, and Andy Porter was another one. And I've got what I think is the best edification to open a book to. This is also coming from, mind you, the person who for 10 years carried around with him a Tibetan language book, trying to figure out why the grammar, as I was learning it, whenever I would talk to a Tibetan, they would say, "That's not how we do things. I don't understand why." I'm like, it's right here in the book. And finally, I read the foreword, and it explained why it's that way. So the irony that I would want to stop the printing on my book for a foreword that I clearly don't read. So hopefully not everyone's like that. Hopefully people will open this book and go, I love forewords. They're incredible.
Oh, good. Well, I look forward to reading it.
Wah, wah. All right, I'm going to go silent and turn off my camera so you guys don't watch me, my pig lips eating this food, because Geisha would make fun of me. It's not McDonald's.
Good for you. McDonald's helping making thinner.
I don't think so.
McDonald's really good for that. Make really thin. No need big door.
Double door.
Maybe sometimes triple.
Triple door. Garage door.
Yeah, look like that. McDonald's is helpful, tasty. Yeah, that can help.
Is everyone back? Let's see. Hard to tell.
Looks like it.
Yeah. San lep yogiri la.
Yeah, that nigga.
Mhm.
Oda tosjene ta kanji. Nambe nyomong like kyundul tane nyomong shu chaya de ta nambe yene menate. Jitere. Tene lo tuntin sena mido. Geve lo de. Dewa tengen ta kibu tengen. Di sam chogi lo de. Nguenzine ti ta shuya peljuya. Kone konbeldu tangya. Chedunga tu ta te konbeldu tangya. Te nambe ta tumo me minyamlinde tere ta ngone chena. Tindugala ramebel tawa side. Tara yongya de ko nyomola chik tara mangboyorwa. Tangbo nyomo rapa de zu mea zu zoya tabjela tawa de rapa chisung. Ane ko samlo chunchung yogen tindila paane sungro. Ote pe kechembor da teke de.
Mhm.
다 선전반에서는 아니 딱 가르쳐래. 맞아 대진 대면서나 여러분 증명주 보면도 발리당 산스크리트나 야가도 usung도. 다 발리 중일 텐데 아니 제가 뭐든 대대방이 중 dunde wangdijana
Di Pali ki.
Pali ki shunu
Kya warum pache di Pali lecture ke
lecture ke wo
yakshare.
lecture ke laltene ani senzam badan to uma pachungre tatte kanche to su namche chiru chimbarwa odatere
Laso dene di semsampadang su ani lecture ke. Umapa. Okay.
다 택진 아니 셈데 장주기 셈 태바준비 셈데 killing 거 아니 갈로니
So when it comes from the perspective of Buddhism, Buddhism really sees that negative emotions and mental afflictions, really sees them as the problem. The negative thoughts that come into our minds and these negative perspectives, and they really see and identify these as problematic. And whenever we're in emotional upset, having a lot of negative emotions, then we really don't have the inner conditions that allow us to find any of our own peace and happiness and ease. And what we really need to do, according to Buddhism, is to look inside and find the mental states and attitudes that lead us to this happiness and this ease, so that we can experience these for ourselves. This is really one of the very, very unique aspects of the practice of Buddhism. So we look to the inner landscape of the mind and look to remove the emotions that cause us to suffering and to be unhappy, and steal away our ease and happiness. And then as well, there is a focus on the view of selflessness, of emptiness. And these are depicted from the coarse and obvious down to very, very refined understanding of emptiness, of selflessness. And so we start with the most coarse understanding of these very coarse, like the very overt view of selflessness. And at this level, the beings that are of the lower capacity, that don't have such a deep, like a deep discerning wisdom, can work at this level to remove the negative emotions, and can understand negative emotions on this very overt and obvious level. And so we have the two vehicles, the teachings that can be divided into two categories, or two vehicles, what is called the lower vehicle and the higher vehicle. And these also correlate to the Pali traditions and Sanskrit traditions of Buddhism. And the higher vehicle are the Sanskrit traditions, which come from the Sanskrit traditions, are really the ultimate vehicle, are this higher vehicle. And this higher vehicle of the Sanskrit tradition includes both the mind only and the prasangika, or as also we called them earlier, the Chittamatra or Madhyamaka vehicles. These are the higher vehicle, and they are the Sanskrit tradition.
semzamba side semzam side chitata ngazo naji sibi chitaje chidon chirol tumdegenji chenyo marela gore ta semzambe chitamje semgi zani sem pacha seltobne ngazo nangre mado chirol tumdegenji ten zawani yo marela gore semzambala goite tere tandashende.
And so we have first the Chittamatra, which in Tibetan is Semsamba, and that translates to meaning mind only. And what they proclaim is that outward and external things are not established, but rather what we experience as external phenomena are simply karmic imprints that are ripening in the mind, that this is contact that's happening all within the mind, and that what we are experiencing is not external from us, but merely a function of what's happening in our own mind. The outer things are not external to us, but rather imprints within our own mind. And this is roughly what is asserted and posited by the mind-only school.
자자 다 배자게나 운본진베 미시다나 운본이 빠차지를 두베레스 샘기 빠차지를 두베레 빠차 셀톱기 낭레 마도 틴두가 코니 제지파레라 거다 빼
Bompa
ngompo
ngompo hola
ngompo ng은지 미시로 ngompon진베 미싱이 빠차 안에 찌를 두베레스 에 간제 pacha singi pacha seltoble ngombu nang chamjire mato ngombu kon chilo ne ngombu yo neginji ingini yo marela gore.
Mhm. And so, for example, according to those proponents of mind-only school, blue, roa, blue,
Blue.
green, blue, sometimes
That's
blue.
karina re that.
Alas. So blue, if we take something that we are seeing as blue, mind only says that there is nothing blue out there, but what is being, it is due to the karmic imprints within the mind. So that blue that one is seeing is no different from the karmic imprint in the mind. It is not external. It is a karmic imprint in one's own mind. So it's not external to one, but it is the karmic imprint that is ripening and it is perceiving as blue. This is all within mind only.
다 선잠be 생이라 가래라 그러잖아. 선잠바 코로나 돈다지 생이 지어라. 생이데 딜라 그래. 치든 개 밀렌징스. 영원 렌둡든데베 남페투타 마와데. 다처럼 선잠be 생이래. 치든 개 밀렌징. 치든 킬링 말해스. 영원 렌다 영원 렌 넘버투바 킬링이. 다 영원 쓰디가라 유행 왕게 tum데근달라 영원 लग보래. 이 नंबर 2 बा खेलेंगे then 2 खेलेंगे teaching to tamawadala
Dendrup kele karegi janwang digi
jangwan then 2 खेलेंगे jangwan जनता कंडे लगोरे you can jenla then 2 देगनला jangwan लगोरे you the kelna then 2 गंदला jangwan लगोरे तेगला यहाँ जबाजेर ते लामना गोथम न्यांगारा कांजे you can wangi 2 देगनला jangwan लगोरता.
So how do we define this school? What defines this mind-only school? Well, they are the philosophical system that do not accept the establishment or existence of outer things, but do accept that things are dependently under the power of dependence, they assert existence. So what does that mean to be a dependent phenomena, that things exist dependently? This means that things exist due to causes and conditions. And mind only says that these dependent phenomena that come into being due to cause and conditions are truly established. And so first we must understand, we must first lay out this dependent existence, dependent on cause and conditions. If it is dependent, has the power of coming into being due to causes and conditions, it is truly established. So first, we lay that out.
Tendi nugala sanzamba nang yondugala chirol diyo badne nangiorwa chio karena chirol be tarimbu yudi iljen ganchiso nangior chirol yobazan nangiorde nisul ngoimada tendi yo mares sem pacha seldobji chung residugala jidda zulten seni badu labada jibachi kyare nansul de nisul tung mares tindugala Kang atun nangchi chudi kang enpe tin nawe sepade yoye pardu ta chudi yo nangyul chudi yoris sepade mena nangyul chudi yo mare labgor tan yul gala tesap chimbu yo mare nang sepe gala tesap chisho jan jagdo sanzambe.
And so mind only says that all that is experienced is actually happening within the mind. It is not happening somewhere external, somewhere out there. Even though we see things outside of ourselves, and even things can appear very distant, very far away, Mind Only said all of this is actually taking place mentally. Everything, it's taking place within the mind. And actually, their view is parallel to what atomic atomic science says, is that the way things appear and the way they are in reality at an atomic level is not, those two are in contradiction to each other. Things are not the way they appear to be. And so what Mind Only School also says is that as long as there is a mind perceiving, so all of this is happening karmically within the mind, as long as there is a consciousness perceiving, then that appearance, that experience is there, that object is there. But if there is no mind perceiving it, the object is not there. This is also something that the Mind Only posit.
Diane and Gisela, I have a question. So I have the Diane, I have the definition I want to ask Gisela about for the basis of the question. I believe this is a mind only definition. So I'm going to say Zuk dang zu zingitsema zejengitongwa. The visible object and the object, the valid perception that grasps the visible object is empty of a separate substance. So first of all, the question is that rooted in mind only? And second of all, where's the fault in that?
Ani di sikche di samsamba git sikrebe, samsamba git sani rebe, Gisela.
senza tawa tu
Tawade.
kala ta te legire tere ta
Lasso.
zudo zunjin sema zeji res ze tade du tongguren ze tade du tongwade ta senza tawa tardu tere ta ingu
Lasso. Kongi chiwa dire.
re
Ani
senza
dindreyana dela kyun kariyore. Tawa dela, sik dela, kyun kariyore.
zudo zunjin sema zejing dongwade sta senza zudo zunjin sema zeji du gorwa zeji ta tejing labya kanche ze karzana pacha chi lituberes zeji insan de pacha chi lituberes
Di serpodo, kongi chiwa dire. Dindre, di serpodo, di dondak serpodo, di tawa serpodo, yana dela kyun kariyore.
ta
Tawa dela. So Mark, do you mean from like a
Yeah.
Prasangika view?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Dene pena di taljorwa ki tolne dela kyun kari degiore.
teda chuchumbowa umata senjambe shebaden zudo zunji chema kona number 2 ba kelembara jawanwa chadan number den umatangi weltanate number 2 ba dulchame yo marwa tengal du tata yoro te yore.
So the fault, so yes, Geshe-la said that is what the mind only or Samsampa Chitamatrans posit, that the substance, you know, that which mind is grasping, and the grasping mind is the same substance, is the same thing. It is one karmic imprint. So what is the fault in that from the perspective of Prasangika, which is the highest of the tenet systems? Well, actually, what the mind only is saying is that the mind, the perceiving mind, and the object which is established based on cause and condition is truly established. There is true establishment in a causal level and on the mind that perceives. They see true establishment in both of those things. However, at the level of the Prasangika view, there is not an atom's worth of true reality in any of that, in the substance nor the mind perceiving.
다 밖에 다 주도 준진 참아 제지레스 렌지 미방에 네비저 산나들 민주고서 숨고하래 인도 되게 되게 두고하래 제지임바 다티 지파 지kan 여름 숨다 여름 저 콘덴 피지क्स 때에 개발된 게 까지 주디가라 sensambe tawada tingi pet content physics kebatu sungyo de tata degidus tap tipe misibe tata degidus sungdo terung physics scholar to zonguni physics ngomade to dung kengmidu sungdo yarum chiki physics ngomade uma thangyu de chare de to dung de leo marta ko Sheba Konanta, Georgi Sheba de la Misi de Wangbu Mado, Ilu Toba de Jashigo Marwa.
The Mikdang Mixiwambo.
Oh, Miki Sheba Zamado, Miki Wangbu Sheba Zamado, Iki Sheba de Todum, Cartore, that she Nutra Tenribe, that physics scholar to the Todum Joshigo Mare. Jeza, physics Kuma Sheba, Ilu Toba. And
so, again, at the point of understanding things at a very atomic and subatomic level, in quantum physics, for example, they correlate, the view of quantum physics correlates with what the mind-only school are saying. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama often points this out, saying that modern science at the level of quantum physics hasn't reached the point of, it's at a level of a mind-only school, and it hasn't reached the level of prasangikas. They don't understand to that level of refinement. For what they see and what some Western science sees for example, the eye faculty and an eye consciousness, how the eye works, but they don't include the mental faculty of mental consciousness. They haven't gotten to that part yet. They're with the physical faculty of the eye consciousness, but haven't gotten to the level of breaking things down to what is happening at the level of the mental consciousness. And that's where they need to evolve to in order to reach the level of understanding that has already been reached within Buddhism, for example, in this highest tenet system of Prasangika view. La.
Shibenane tensho de ilu to bad chadewa yunbe ringbo dengende wangbo ko lemsang wangshi de wangbo ga no de wangshin ga ro lo that yun tempo ji marwa ilu to bad be yun tempo re chadeore tanda ga zo be chigala de semtharun ro ya de ilu to bad wangbo de tenginde ilu to bad ra ro gore wangbo de matena ilu to bad tharun ro sha gore.
Okay, tiso pochumo songesh lagondaki ankersuna.
Tuba ishi de. Ko wangbodan ten yondu gala ko rakpa chagore. Te wangbodan ma ga yondu gala ni chiwa osel tende to be on the part chede ko tarundu gorwa. Ilu topa de. Tem rapadan ga ne tamu chagore. Tini nyamne ni seta ga yondu gala sem giranjingi 가르소래 뉴미섬디 다가랑 문진적 우거라 두바 이시들인데 코페티 상기 사버던 롱엔도 코진데 코 템포 시부지 차되어라
Kari temple,
윤 템포
Gyun temple. The Semgi Gyun temple.
셈 일로 또 봐도 두바 이시
Gyun temple.
디탄다 세리비 시거 말아 왔단다 단다 세리비 저제 셰바스 되고 왕베 셰바지 땀랑 문진지기도 숭도
So, for example, in modern science, they, through observation, they have observed and accept the sense consciousnesses. For example, the eye consciousness. This is something very obvious. They have identified that. They can see that when it is injured or defective, that it stops working, for example. And this is understanding of experience, of this human of experience at a very coarse level. But what they have not yet delved into is the mental consciousness. So we have the five senses, but then according to Buddhism, within Buddhism, we also have this mental consciousness, this mental sense, this mental consciousness that when the other senses have receded and they're not working in conjunction, there is the very subtle mental consciousness. So this is the consciousness, for example, that one separates from the body and goes into the bardo and so forth. It is this very, very refined and subtle level of mind that is the level of mind that is under and not connected to the operation of the other senses that we practice with. Actually, we connect to the nature of mind, this subtle consciousness, this original and unadulterated mind that we then practice and stabilize. That is what Buddhists work with in practice, this mind stream that is very, very refined. And that's what is worked with at the level of attaining enlightenment. Enlightenment is a mind state, the enlightened mind. We work with this subtle consciousness. This is something that modern day science is yet to discover.
다 선삼바 수디가라 즉 뭐네 또서 타보 차고 왔다 아마 너데 발타난 시다 타와 차루 차고 그래 이거는 주기 다음에 그래 거다 선삼베 거기 이 남자 셰운데가라 아니 가르세고 와라 거기 선삼바게 영왕 용주 군다즈르 다 숨치고 와래
Zhenwang Yongdrup Kontak.
용주 진디 추 이게 내루들이 다 내루데 와 맞아 중이 세야지도 될라 용주라 그래 아니 정황세대 디제 기초간가 정황나는 주그래 위겐 신기 왕았더니 유지 유튜브 게텐도 들어봐래 용주 간텐 동시 최정기 이 용두기 땡 동시 추진적인 데라고 그래 이거
Zhenwangdi.
자만도 용두기 땡 동시 추진적 거라 땡도 유지도 게텐도 그발라 그래 근데 군다데 지디가라 딱페리다 다 녀몽리데 군다 차대 그래 어떻대
Kontak di
군다다 녀몽리데 저 차장 군단도 이규 군다
Laso Dune di Zhenwang Yongdrup Kontak di Semsampa ani
선삼베다 이 남자게 yawa chaya de dos chigire.
Karegi jinyam chak chirgi.
That Jidang ko shiji namdang chigro.
Mhm.
Kebar che on the gala, Mazo shiji namdang che on the gala, Jawanza de Zurjik, any on Dubje, then Kuntaside.
Mhm. And so we've been discussing already the views of Vaibhashika and Sautrantrika, which have a lot of detail. It's a lot to get through and a lot to understand. And now we actually move on to the mind-only school, Chittamatra, which is even more refined. And so more refined in its view, in what they are proponents of. And so when it comes to the categories or basis that things are established as, then there are three categories. There is dependent phenomena, thoroughly established phenomena, and imputed phenomena, imputed things. And so looking at these three categories, for example, that is dependent is that is a compounded phenomena, something that comes together due to causes and conditions and different factors. That is a dependent phenomena. When it comes to the thoroughly established, what this actually points to is the actual underlying nature of the phenomena, or its dharmata nature, its actual true abiding mode. And then we have the imputed, the category of things that are imputed. And in this category are all of the different feelings and emotions, negative emotions, and so forth. So we have these three.
Kanchada Senzamel Tawa Tartuzade, Chidin Dulzamian Kill, Chidin Guni killing go Marda.
Chidin
Guni killing your Mare. Chidin K Melanging Lagdoa. Jama then to the Banam Betuta Mawas Sidigala, Chidin Sidigala Tape, Ta Senzambe, Chidin de Yena Senzambe Tuta and Galdo Gore. Nasigata Yawa Mambo or that to Jashan Digore. Anjing Mamade, Chidin Guni Mindoyaji. Ta Zudo Zunzi Sama, Ziji imba killing a Zejingi Tonga, Zejingi Tonga, Ziji imba tu Gora.
Zejingi Tonga.
Tong Seduala, Zejingi Tong to them, Zeji imba tu Gora. Zejingi Matona, Zeta de Chadura. For that ticket, that Kajo, Tumdi, Ta Nenga Chishortage Chagor ticket.
And so what are the main points of what they assert? The mind-only school does not accept that there is a continuum in external things, that there is no continuum basis to external things. They don't accept that. Actually, if they were to find or posit, if someone is positing true establishment in external things, then it doesn't fit in with the view of this school, of what they posit. If it were established, it would contradict the view of mind-only school. And so the mind-only school says that this that this substance, that like the material that is apprehended is empty of existence. And these are this is a very main point. These are two main points of the mind-only school.
Yeah, that Tirin Digalajana Tua.
So maybe we should stop with the instruction here and with the teaching commentary here and leave time for questions. So do we have questions? I know someone said that earlier they had a question. So do speak up. If you speak up, then you'll be the first one for the question.
I'll be brave. I'll ask a question. Since I did say I had a question earlier. Okay, so back to something that we were discussing earlier where we were talking about desire and attachment. I have a tough time imagining relationships, marriage, children. I have a difficult time imagining a life that takes a path where those things exist, where I'm not exposing myself in some way to desire and or attachment. So would the wise Buddhist say that I am viewing relationships incorrectly, or that one naturally exposes themselves to desire and attachment in some way? Or is there another option I'm not considering?
Ani di docha ki kolorela. Ani ngone chena ngaso di mise dila pena ngaso di dralo mampo yore pena di garo kyore ani kemendan kyoga yore ani dene dralo di nangshin yurpe kapsu di dochak mepe tone ani kandas ani chegore di ngone kangyang dochak kangyang mepe tone ani yong sigi yona ani
근데 낭배라 헬겐로가나 나바 파마여라 파마다 부도 보모레마다 부도 보모마 인게 낭배 파마즈르지요 말와 대다 너기 말발로자와 김바레 김베덴젠 다든 너차즈데 텔레가와양 로얌제알라테주 김베 까고라 그 자잔 내주도 때가 가가로와 그 남배 나나 냠는 담보 김바람 중때니 람중 때니 겔로 추론제데 빵제데 지금 줘야지도 아닌 바지 강가 맞지도 달라고 말해 강가 키는데다
Lasso. Dene kimpa yen ane yena. Kimpa yena dene dochakla.
랑게 kenyo 말해 자잔 앞에 다치 시라게 주지만 임바 간종먼주 제야데 다 넘고 와래 배나 로 중중기 로 첨보댕도 잡아제도 견리 제소당 아니 랑기 자잔을 젬바제바이나 대 견리 랑 자잔다 대 견요 말 고고바여라 이게 로고라
And so
가자 꼬발 타길 가자도 꼬바니 빼때가 두르고서 답에 남배는 시부시 좀 버르다 같이도 니레세 너차데 지단에 견 디스 견요레스 이내양 가자 꼬발 타길 아니 자잔데서다 야 미세로와
So what we need to understand with desire and attachment, these are things that we can work on as someone who has taken monastic vows. This is an understanding of controlling desire and attachment, helps one to stay within one's own vows and so forth if one is ordained. But also then, for example, there are practitioners such as the great translator Marpa, who was a householder, not monastic. And still the understanding of desire and attachment is very useful to really ward away any sexual misconduct and so forth in both of these categories, whether one is a householder or a monastic. But actually, to be like completely without desire and relationships and so forth, this doesn't really apply to completely eliminate these within, like, being a couple, being someone's partner, being someone's spouse. These are not things that need to be completely abandoned. There will be, some level of desire and attachment within couplehood, and that's okay. What we have to understand is that for one who has taken monastic vows, then understanding how to curb desire and attachment is the way one stays within their vows. One avoids sexual misconduct and so on. That being said, even if one is not monastic and within being a partner, a spouse, or with one of a couple, then one also needs, this will be beneficial to keep one from just acting with absolutely no limits and just being very unconscientious of their behavior. So, for example, even within relationships and dating and so forth, it is, to go with someone who is very, very young or, very, very old, for example, or someone else's spouse, someone who belongs to someone else, is someone else's wife or husband or partner, this is also inappropriate. And so using these techniques to curb one's desires and attachments can even be useful when, even in the point when one is dating or one is a spouse, is one of a couple. And so what we need to identify, for example, when we're understanding Buddhism and these techniques, is what is it that is looking to be eliminated, or what we are curbing ourselves away from, or what we need to do. One needs to make that distinction to find out what is being encouraged to do and what is being discouraged away from. And so here with this desire and attachment, it may come into play in relationships and so forth, but we can also still avoid the negative aspects of it, even within a regular marital relationship.
Thank you so much.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that was a really good answer.
Other questions?
I had a question. I think Geshe-la has referenced it before, and I've heard it probably 3 or 4 times now from His Holiness's teachings. Like His Holiness references it over and over again. I might have to wait till next week. I want to say it's Chandrakirti, I think chapter 6, verse 36, where they're using some proof. And His Holiness always says it, and I can't write it down fast enough, but it's like, if the Arhat's meditation of non-existence annihilate, it's like the Prasangikas are talking back, and they said if the Arhat's meditation annihilated everything, then nothing would exist, or something like that. I haven't seen it. Maybe you guys have posted it already, and I just haven't written it down yet.
Right. I know just what you're talking about. He actually used it this last weekend in his teaching. Yes. So you would like clarification?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have the exact quote either. Geshe-la. Okay, Pakpe Namjak. He already knows. Okay, di korla chiksuru jila.
다티 자외 가서 그상 영망만 라지메 벨 타와 살려기 중망부 지대서 저로 거야부 차고도 빼미스 깨짐버래 저로 거야부 차서는 다 파빙염자데 파빙염자 이시 몰라 최강 나야 요마와 최낭이 최진 나야 요마라 냠자 공얼로 빼 강가 동상지마도 직 동지 추진 나야 진 요마와 다 라지메 벨 타와데 과야부 마제나 냠자 이시디 취진다 가와도 분발해서 집이 유 탈누구도 저데 탈와지 땅 거래 아빙 냠자 이시라라 능겨 말아 만한데 그 공부 집이 유조리 차르고도 라지메 벨 타와는 과야부 마잖아 라지메 벨 타와라 과야부 차서는 딜레고 말해
Oh, that's so.
Tipeng minsibe nenga chimboare mulata ngazo rajime bel tawat zola kwa abu chajugo peng minsibe ke chimbo din thalwa jiore
Okay, yeah. I know.
minsibe ke chimbore
So this comes in the four logical absurdities. So Matt, if you're searching it, or anyone else that would like to search it, it comes within the four logical absurdities. And so this is that when you apply the and so I'll say this part, then I'll say what Geshe-la said. You apply the four logical absurdities to a point to prove how ridiculous it is. And this is something that the prasangikas do to establish their point and to refute objections and points of the other schools. They apply these four logical absurdities. And within one of the four logical absurdities, it talks about conventional phenomena being able to withstand the scrutiny or the investigation of an arhat in the state of meditative absorption. So it's related to that. And so what Geshe-la said is the most important thing for us to understand is what does it mean? So this view of a lack of any true intrinsic existence to perceive, to grasp, to be within the fixes of the realization of a lack, or in the view of a lack of intrinsic nature, is what's called the meditative absorption, the wisdom meditative absorption of an arhat. What we have to understand is, what is that meditative absorption? What is the state of that? What is actually happening while an arhat is absorbed in meditative concentration? Actually, in the state of meditative concentration of an arhat, there is no objects being perceived. It is a completely open samadhi meditation that is not grasping any objects. There is no object being observed. And so anyways, so these two comments don't even go together. An arhat wouldn't be examining an object because there is no object of examination in the samadhi, in that samadhi. So that's the most important thing to understand, is what is the meditative concentration of an arhat. And to also this this logical absurdity about an arhat actually under the examination of something that, whether there's selflessness or not, Actually, they're not observing it.
세 미세 깨침버려 인규.
And so this is also, something that's important to know about. And as maybe we have another question, I'll look and see. I don't know if anyone else
I
is.
actually found something from His Holiness, if you want me to read it, about the four
Thank you.
absurdities.
Well, especially in particular this one.
Yeah. So it says, His Holiness alluded to four logical fallacies that in Chandrakirti's Entering into the Middle Way explains would ensue if things had objective existence. They are that the Arya being's meditative absorption on emptiness would be the destroyer of phenomena, that it would be wrong to teach that things lack ultimate existence, that the conventional existence of things would be able to withstand ultimate analysis into the nature of things, and that it would be untenable to state that things are empty in and of themselves.
Could you read that one more time?
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't enumerate the four, but I'm going to try and do it for you. One, they are that the Arya being's meditative absorption on emptiness would be the destroyer of phenomenon. Two, that it would be wrong to teach that things lack ultimate existence. Three, that the conventional existence of things would be able to withstand ultimate analysis into the nature of things, and that it would be untenable to state that things are empty in and of themselves. His Holiness disclosed that he reflects on these 4 points every day in his meditation. Whether you think of the self of persons, consciousness, or whatever, everything appears to have some kind of objective, independent existence. When the object of negation appears to your mind and you wish to refute it, you're conducting analysis of how things exist. Let me send you the link to that so that you can peruse it for a posting.
Sure.
Because there's more after that. I just don't want to take up all the time.
Yeah. And we can, you can send that. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've heard him reference that probably 5 or 6 times now. And it always is kind of, I have to go back and watch it again because that one always just kind of goes over my head. And it's a combination of, he explains really fast and the translator's really fast, and then I'm just not really with it. So thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome.
탈화지대 깨침보다 시부지 깨침보래. 이나양 탈화지 내 야부지 세발라 땅보 가상의 쪽이 가르쳐오래. 니조 시과 빼미스고 깨침보래. 당이도 여탄데 당이도 두세다. 아니 덴바르메 메세데도 시과데 빼미스고 깨침보래. 라동참이 시다 니베 그래서 사실이 전당 어디서 깨침보래 빼미스고 깨침보래.
Lakchin.
Pena kundana mujidi sundo. Tawe ranjin tsövechi manye paya kegurlas. Manye daji tsolmembi jigi minzam lamar thong sigdo. Tal tawe ranjin bay ranjin tuba yome tsol yondu gala. Ani karzora. Ani ranjin ki tuba yome do. Ta tsal ndu gala ranjin tuba tulsam ya raya me bachagruwa. 이 라진 투바 메바 깨다 베나 다시데 뿜바 내지 뿜바요 마르젤라고 마라 뿜바 zembar 투바 디오 마르젤라고 거와 제가 다시 마녀 다시 고 민베스 다시 뿜바 투고 고 투고 마레스 그때 대존도 사한테 시와데 빼 미스베 깨침버레 대체 아니 야벤더반데 고자니 딩오보 남게랑에 뭐 투방 고기스 밀어서봐 땡진대반 중에 레기 넘버 멤버 민고고 생긴도
디공탕은 뭐지?
대 말에 대 야벤더와 야벤더와
시계배로.
단다 레베 dawa tapin se yapin telware jiga bendelwa koteso la kwa chana tini ranji me bala kwa yabu machana di gyondigi di talwa jidi yongware tepe nenga chimburda ranji me bala kwa chawal dizul kwa yabu chana ranji me mesan la kwa chana di talwa jidi juya yomare di talwa jidi nenga chimbu shibu jiri sungdoa te nenga ina re di 가르잖아 우만 주변에 배 살고요래 지네 구르고 되니 우마 란델 요래 주바 란델 아니 장엘레 신임베네 때 탈와지디 배네 전부째 가요래
And so these four logical absurdities are important to know, to keep in your mind and to know. As well, very important to understand what is meant by lacking any true nature. And so this is a very important point, to understand what is being searched for in an object, in things, what is being parsed out. Any true nature, that's what is being parsed out. And as Guntan Rinpoche said, in searching for essence in the view, it is not found. Not being found, thus it is refuted. Since there is no basis of designation, it follows that what one is left with is mere nominal labels. And so the direction that we come from in our experience is to examine, does this possess any existence or not? And when we look around us, just like Guntan Rinpoche said, in searching for essence in the view, it's not found. Actually, you can search for any existence. Look for existence. And what you're left with is to find is that there's not an atom of true reality. So one can't find the existence of something at all. Not to say that there's not a basis of examination. There is a basis that one is looking for existence or selfness in. We're not saying it doesn't appear. The basis doesn't appear. So for example, we're not saying the bumpa or the vessel doesn't appear. What we're saying is that there's no true reality of that vessel. There is a basis of examination. And so, Umala Jupa ani rangro Umala Jupa la kari
Uma jupena talwaji de koy yore ani uma juper rangdel yore laban dawa tapen se tena yore tengeli singimbe ne yore ta kanche ranji me pala tawa tala kwa yabu machana talwaji din jugo are ranji me pala tawa kwa yabu chasu talwaji din juya khona yomare.
Okay. So, and also then from Chandrakirti, from Lopan Chandrakirti, there is the auto commentary on entering the middle way. And what he says in that auto commentary is that if we don't understand the view of selflessness, then we end up at one of these four logical absurdities. And when we do really understand the points of what it means to lack a self or lack intrinsic nature, then we avoid these four logical absurdities.
Tao ranjime be tawala kwaya wo chala kundang ramji jungde che. Te gangla ni gyapen derwa che. Te gangla tsashiti jingi. Ranjin yome tsulwa yingi, yome tsulwa minbe. Chene manye pa ni ranjin kepa yingi, milo sopa ni kepa tenni ma yin zer tsi doa. Tezo ranjin me pala
Sunere?
tsashiti jingi tsi. Kazange tangyo. Jerumbuchi tsashi tsawa sherabu tika jiyore. O tiki tsi re. Te pe mi sipa kechimbo tezo pe ranjin me pe tawala kwa lebi yala demi sonde jire ta. Teni madhubi jure. Madhubi jubin doye nala. Kanji ken leke pa tema che. Teni hewe ranjin yele mani. Ken la rale kan tongbar che se zungdo. Ken la rale kan ye tongbar che. Kanji tongi che na payo yin se ya tsi tezo. Ta ranjin me pe tawa pe kwa chaya pe demi sonde je teki tere. Ani ta nyomon choni pa samdang na ta yang lula luwang jijindu timukul lula luwang jijindu timukul nekyu tiji nyomon tamje kyang timu jombe jomba girus ta tenjin dewan juwang kang tono timu jumin girus tichin bepat tume kya tam thoma nyeper cha ze sungdo lula luwang jijindu luwang de lu tamje lekya beorwa miwang de milui thamjali kyayo mara nawang de nawe wambuchi bolare nawang de ne wambuchi bolare chewang de che wambuchi bolare ko soson degido ote najin jene dochagi nyembo jedang nyembo tezo ta kotagi kongdu che nani docha nyembo la midu bogomya jedang nyembo la zopa gomya ani ngajal gombala nyembo la tendel gomya tendi ko nyembo tendi chigir mado pete ko panthu mares kat di pe lu wangpo ngana nyumon thamje ngana jinjine mari pa kapan kana mari pa kena ani nyumon thamje ken gures so mari bala be ide mari pa kan khagreza tenjin dewa jonga thon timu jungmin girut tendel ene be zamo tongba ni cheba yena timu ten zawani ke gures Tijin bepa tume kyang, te nga tuta bepa mangpo chene, te chene, kanchi tendel shea la, tendel la kuwa chaya, zama tongpa nyi la kuwa chaya la be gugure, te sungdwa. Tezo pel demi re ta, tezo demi re. Tezo yang ni yang tu samtang gore, tezo na chung tang yo mare. Tezo hako na tini talwa jide, juthang de, jini hako gore, te mata kabure. Tezo lo kuwa machana. Uma rangi pe uma pa mampo pe loben mampo la thalwaji din jugu arta
And so also furthermore we have the quote from Jetsun Kappa that says the search for essential existence or non-existence is not the search for mere existence or non-existence. Not found under investigation, essential existence is refuted. I, etc., the other faculties, however, are not refuted. And then there's a second quote that Geshe-la quoted. Let me see if I can read it. Ani kecha ke che tirape.
Diane,
demare raji yeme tsowa yingi yeme tsowa mimbe chenne manyepa tab chepa chenne manyepa de chenne manyepa raji yopa khegis chenne manyepa de raji ki tuba de khere mado tongji lo so mi lo so ba te kheng maris tongji cheje mi tongji cheje de yorwa tongji mena cheje tongji khona mena kan tongji cheje ne mena ani tongba chuni de keji chuni de tu marwa.
And so I'll have to find, I can track that one down after. And then furthermore, there's the quote in regard to the physical sense sources. And that when the things that that arise due to the physical sense sources, then one by one, we need to apply those antidotes to them. But when it comes to the view of the lack of intrinsic nature, that's an antidote that takes care of all of the problems. This is once one has the view and one has realized the lack of any self-nature, then one doesn't need to apply all of those individual antidotes. So the senses, when we say the senses, that pervades the entire body, it means all of the senses, be it vision or hearing or taste. And in the same way, when we talk about the one view that pervades as an antidote towards all problems, this is the view of selflessness, of the lack of intrinsic nature. And so we spoke earlier about the need to apply individual remedies, be it for desire and attachment. We think about the impurities and unclean substances in the body. Or for anger, we meditate on love, and for patience. And for pride, we meditate and think about the 12 links of interdependence. But one remedy can't abandon all of these negative feelings. One thing can't take care of all of them. But the one thing that can take all of them and cut all afflictive emotions, knocking them down, is the view of interdependence and emptiness. And therefore, in that quote that I will look up, it says that once we have seen interdependence and emptiness, it conquers all of the afflictions, and we become very conscientious, meaning we then become very, very careful in all of our words, actions, and deeds. Really, to understand the view of the lack of intrinsic nature is really the most important thing to learn and understand. So there's a verse also that will come later on in this wisdom chapter, where Shantideva says that it's not outer appearances that we see that will be eliminated, that will be cut off, but our fixation on a true concrete reality that is the cause of our suffering is what needs to be eliminated. So when we have the view, when we've seen the lack of intrinsic nature in things, it's not that we're going to look around and objects aren't going to appear to us anymore. They will appear, we will see things, but what we will no longer do is fixate to a true concrete reality and that which we see. And it's actually fixation to things as true and real that is the cause of our suffering. And so what needs to be actually eliminated, or what we need to bring to a stop, is our fixation on things as true and real. And this brings us back to the point that what we need to learn to identify in our path of practice and in our studies are those points. What is it that needs to be abandoned, or what needs to be ceased, or what needs to be brought to cessation or rejected, and that which needs to be accomplished? We need to be able to identify those two things.
Shologa nishtenga pat zetu patredo.
And so
Diane, while you're looking for that, I'll just tell everybody that I put the 4 absurdities from Jetson Kappa's Essence of True Eloquence in the chat. And Doug also posted the source from where that came from in one of His Holiness's talks on DalaiLama.com.
Okay.
Talwajide. Ranjimebel tawala kwa yabu chana, te talwajidin juya koran yamare. Wa machana jugurite.
So if we understand, so if we first understand what is meant by lack of intrinsic nature, or a view, holding the view of lack of intrinsic nature, then understanding the 4 absurdities will be helpful. If we haven't really truly pinpointed and identified what's meant by lack of intrinsic nature, there's less of, these will be less applicable. So first we have to understand what's meant by a lack of intrinsic nature. So in my book, it's what Geshe-la just quoted, that comes later in the wisdom chapter. For me, in this edition, is chapter 20, verse 25 in chapter 9, where it says, "It's not indeed our object to disprove experiences of sight or sound or knowing. Our aim is here to undermine the cause of sorrow, the thought that such phenomena have true existence." And so that was verse number 25. Yeah, and thank you for all those things in the chat. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
What is the samno yabutanda ranjimebel tawala? Tenin jugo kale tezogan lebnani talwan jusan tezo hakugurwa. Ko ranjimebel tawala kwa mena talwan jusan ta hakugumare. Dechigena ko kabore.
So the first thing, again, emphasizing, Geshe-la's emphasizing this point, really, before you delve into the 4 absurdities, really understand well what is meant by the view of a lack of intrinsic nature, a lack of true existence. Understand that first, and then there'll be some practical application of these 4 absurdities. There'll be a meaning, and you'll be able to interpret what's being said in the 4 logical absurdities without first narrowing down and pinpointing what is meant by a lack of intrinsic nature. Then you will not be able to easily interpret the meaning of the 4 logical absurdities. They won't be as applicable.
Tenjung maimbe chunga yoba maine sungi tezo pe ranjimebel tawala kwa chayale pento pe chimbo yongere.
La so di sikchiti di ngoma ani ngala yona.
Yomare bhajange tango.
Okay. So there is another sunerela.
Ngumbulutugi tawa sheram na yore.
And so Nagarjuna said in the verses of the fundamental verses of the Middle Way, there was another quote. Geshe-la said he'll send it to me so I can get it out to you. I'm not familiar with it. That also helps to pinpoint what is meant by like lacking true existence, something that is not truly existent. And it's a very good quote. Geshe-la said he'll send it.
see the Galayana and sometimes the permissive kitchen.
And so these quotes, these quotes that came from scriptural authority, very, very, very key points and very important to think about them over and over again.
나는 개발 mambo 동이 라 과차 미도제 밥 로빈 다와타 비숨요래.
Dawa drope.
다와타 비숨요래.
And so within the Nalanda masters, so we have the scholars of the Nalanda monastic institution, and Chandrakirti, Master Chandrakirti here that we've been speaking about is one of the 14, Nalanda masters. Is it 14 or 17? Ani the Nalanda gi this Shepa Shedrubdi Nangla ani Katsuyore do the Chung Chupshe.
동이 마도케. 동이를 거 마차근단 되나라 초란 잡아 서기게 땡이 마도 마와 차르서 숨을 군단을 뭐지? 아니 그 버기나라 내선 초경당 초기랑보당 아니 주기 잡아서 봐 땡이 마더나 대진도 마오서 숨을 다가랑 엠베 동이 또요 말 다가랑 라고 인제 다와타 앞에 숨을 대진도 마오서
Tisa pomando gonda keshula. Didon takso pomando.
내선 최경당 아니 초기랑보당 아니 루빈 인연당 주기 잡아서 봐 땡이 마도 봐 너나 대진도 마오서 대진이 마도 봐 대진이 또요 말자 라고이나 다가랑 레즈 라고 인스 다와타 앞에 숨을 Miss Uma Jubarandana Dua.
And so actually not all of the Nalanda masters were, according to Chandrakirti, there were other Nalanda masters, present at the time of this great institution of learning, that he said actually didn't have the correct understanding of emptiness, that they didn't have the correct understanding of a lack of true existence, lack of intrinsic nature, and named them Vasubandhu and several other masters. I don't know all of them, Vasubandhu and 3 others, that there were these 4.
Now, Dharmakirti. Nathan Chokong Karalagana Hakumas.
So Dignaga. Dignaga.
Dignaga and Vasubandhu.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's one missing.
Nathan Chokong Karalagdo.
Nasanga?
Nathan Chokong.
No. I can maybe look and see.
Who did he say?
Nathan Chokong.
Midin Chogyung. I don't know the Sanskrit for that. So we had Vasubandhu, Dignaga, Dharmakirti, and then one other that Chandrakirti said that actually they don't have the most refined understanding of emptiness.
Cholan tapa sogi kyang sa sondena neden chogong yorwa cholo chogi lambo de chota nyung sundo cholan tapa de chota ro ani ingen ta sondena neden chogong da ingen da ta tu yo sondena la kundaran bujo to su cholan tapa sogi kyang tingi ma to mawa charas pe kishele pe yam sambores keba chimbo de tingi ma to ba de
Dene Gontang Rinpoche ki ani dene kebar shandak denso dene di pena rangjin mepegi tawa di
to yo maris mado bade yam sambores
So also Guntang Rinpoche named, there's a verse where he names among the same other Nalanda masters that actually he points out that they have not seen, they've not had a realization of the lack of emptiness, of the lack of true nature. He points it out and says that they have not seen emptiness, have not realized emptiness.
Yeah, that way. Choose to do the karma chu chato chigdo. Yeah, that can't see this something with the package.
So again, important to think about these words, important to think about these verses, and yeah, very important to reflect on.
Yeah. Ngay kerang so you take over that because you samly abu tang no mato.
So Geshe-la says that, you know, he's offered these words and this direction, but unless you think about it, unless you actually do the work from your side, ...
그래서 lele nga yu lengen zon chendena pendo yom kobat gu mare tos kali jegi na tenden pendo yom gre.
You just kind of lay back and say, okay, well, I heard it, you know, that's what he, you know, he said, I heard it. Now, you know, just relax and leave it at that. It will not get you where you want to go. If you really want it to make an impact, then there needs to be something from your side. You need to work at it a little bit. If you want there to be an impact, you must put something into it.
Yeah. 당어종 모아지는 말에.
So shall we make our dedication prayers?
장주 삼초 림보체 마게 번 긴규르지 갸와 냠바 메바에 고네 공도 배워서 장 가리라웨 꼬르웨 진감데 펜단데와 말린 중에네 제레지원 땡진 샤베 시데 파도 땡겨르지 잠부 바웨 질더게 바당 군두장 보테한테 다다 군기지수 달럽지를 개wan데다 담제라동 두숨셰베 이겨와던 마간라 초동가 바당 다쟁게 자원데 상보 저저라동 와라기.
Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it has been born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. In the land encircled by snow-white mountains, the source of all happiness and benefit flows in your person, Chenra Zik Tenzin Gyabso, remain until samsara ends. Just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri obtained omniscience in Samantabhadra too, so now I dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I too dedicate these sources of my merit for all beings to perfect good actions.
지망이디 선자매 칭이데 야와다 대조직 당고라. 아니 그렇지 지망 연결 선자매 걸로 또서 두아tillen체 아니 그런 디지 되는 것도 만들었대. 진짜나 선자마다 우마 턴규원이 좁아져 산다 또 사고 그러와. 선자매 사와균이 깨깨 맨나다 니니진 사례전 로샤나 펜도 doesn't young 말해.
So in order for us to continue and go on to a really meaningful, like further on in the text where it gets into the debate between the Prasangika and the mind only, Geshe-la said it's not very effective for us to just say, oh, mind only is kind of like this, and then get into the text. It's really important to pinpoint that down, really nail it down, and have a very good and clear understanding of some certain points within the mind-only philosophy. And so Geshe-la said that he will send me some particulars to quote or to translate, and so that we all have those in front of us. We have those points. And then next time we meet, we can, if you have any questions about those quotes that went out, you can ask your questions. We can refine all of our questions, or maybe just come to a really clear understanding. And then from there, we'll go on in the text where the debate between Prasangika and mind only start here at the point we're in, and it will make more sense. Makes more sense to do it like this.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Geshe-la. Thank you,
Thank
Diane.
you.
Thank you.
Special thank you, Diane.
It's a pleasure, always. It's a pleasure.
My tongue is now working.
Well, take good care, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you
thank you.
both.
Take care, be well.